Hello, users, and welcome back to Above It All. This is a series where I talk about politics. And now that the primary is over, I'm going to talk a little bit more general stuff. So I'm going to do slightly less responding to meme clips and slightly more provocative idea sessions. This is my hyper pretentious name for this, the provocative idea session. So, today I want to talk about whether or not Bernie Sanders is spineless. I see this comment in a lot of places. I've gotten many comments about this, and I mentioned this slightly in another video, and I just want to extrapolate a little bit on that. Um, I really do think that it's just juvenile to say that, and I mean that with complete sincerity, and I do understand the reaction to say that, but I feel like that's just like a Jimmy Dore dumb bullshit kind of argument. Oh, Bernie's spineless for not doing what I want him to do. Now, do I agree with the analysis? Sure. I just don't agree with the conclusion. Like, when you look at everything that has transpired over the last 5 or 6 years, honestly, I can't understand that argument at all in any capacity. And I'm just, I'm not the smartest person in the world. I'm up there, of course, right? Like, I'm definitely up there, but I'm not the smartest person in the world. But if you look at the Obama era, like peak Obama, like 2013, right? And then you compare that to now with just policy and how people view policy, that's almost, if not entirely, on Bernie Sanders. The fact that people are now talking about things like Medicare for all, even going as far as like abolish ICE, even stuff like high-speed internet for all. These are things that maybe Bernie didn't talk about too much, but it's he brought to the national stage. And so it's just one of those things where, you know, given everything that has transpired, given his entire campaign throughout 2016 to 2020, I just, to call him something like spineless is just peak reactionary. And, the only way I can say that is like you watch too much Jimmy Dore. And, I'm not trying to say that as necessarily insulting, but like, come on, man, you're better than that. Um, you can disagree with his strategies, but it's one of those things where it's like we knew going in, he has never done negative campaigning, and he's like, he's literally just a really nice old man. And that's the thing, is like, it was more important to him to remain positive, even though everyone calls him a toxic Bernie bro, is evil and nefarious. He wanted to prove them wrong just so bad that he sacrificed his chances of winning. And again, I totally understand the reaction. I just think it's reactionary. It's one of those things where you let your initial reaction cloud your judgment and say kind of stupid shit. Um, so yeah, I just don't think it's acceptable, in my opinion, to call him spineless. You can critique his style, you can critique it, but to call him spineless after, just look at the 90s. Look at his record in the 90s on the House floor, just yelling at other people in the House of Representatives. He's not spineless. He's just a good person. And it's one of those things where he comes from an era where he like held the flame of like American socialist tradition almost all by himself in a lot of ways. So there's a lot of like caution that comes with being a self-declared socialist in Congress and stuff. Like, there's a lot of this kind of behavior that he learned, and you can't really expect someone who's nearly 80 years old to completely change how they go about things just like that. Like, back when Super Tuesday happened, and Joe Biden had that whole big coalescence and Elizabeth Warren fucked him over, he started going a little bit negative, but then that quickly stopped because it's one of those things where people in the campaign were probably like, we got to do this, which I agree. They, again, I agree with the analysis. And then he just kind of like half-heartedly said go for it and then kind of pulled him back. And again, I agree that he should have gone after Joe Biden. We shouldn't be in a situation where Joe Biden's the nominee. But also, at the same time, I just can't, like, calling him spineless, like, oh, he's like, when you call Bernie Sanders spineless, and I'm not trying to clutch my pearls here, I know it sounds like it, but I'm really not. Like, it's you call the entire history and career of him to be spineless. Like, no, like to say like he missed the opportunity for 3 or 4 weeks. Maybe you can even say he should have done it in the get go. I agree, but I don't think it necessitates like calling him spineless, like, or he's a shill, or he's a sellout. It's just bizarre. It really is bizarre. And maybe this is a little bit of my innate hero worship, which I try not to do. But it's just one of those things where Bernie is a historical figure. Like, again, I said this before, we're going to be talking about Bernie Sanders literally for the rest of our lives in some capacity. At least I know I will. I can totally imagine myself being 40, watching, like, the floods of climate change take out my hometown and go, like, fucking Elizabeth Warren. If she didn't do this, we would have Bernie Sanders. Like, I can imagine myself doing that. And it's one of those things where I'm not that nihilistic to say that all politicians are evil, as in necessarily speaking because they're politicians. I just find that a little juvenile. Yeah, it's fine to say 99% of them are terrible because that's true. But I mean, I think if you're at a point where you're so nihilistic that you're calling Bernie fucking Sanders a sellout or spineless, I just think it's juvenile. I think you need to reorient yourself a little bit more into reality. And again, I do understand the reaction, but when you build yourself up on a worldview that everyone's against you, even if 99% of people are against you, that's one of the things that the Democratic elite and just the elite in general want to instill in you, is that you are alone and that there is nobody that is there for you. So that, like, it's falling into the trap in a way that I feel that it's just, you shouldn't be doing that. You should always try to understand as many perspectives as you can. And that's kind of my thing. Like, I understand the DNC perspective. Like, I do. I disagree with it. I think it's horrible. I think it's terrible. And I think most of them are scumbags. But I at least try to get that understanding. And so I feel like if you have really any sort of understanding of the Bernie campaign, or if you have any, like, just look at it on a solidarity basis. Has there ever been this amount of class consciousness since, like, the 1930s? I don't think so. Like, and we're looking at a situation where Amazon's like workers are striking. I got hair on my mouth. God, I hate when that happens. Um, like that's amazing. We're looking at like union activity and labor organizing is at like a high historically that it hasn't been at least since like the 1980s, right? Like since Reagan took over. Um, and it's just like it's especially with the internet. Like we're looking at a good horizon right now. And if you just do this whole I'm checking out of politics when you lose a primary, it's just one of those things where, I can't take you seriously to begin with if you just lose once and then just cry about it for all eternity. I don't know. Like, my whole perspective is I like politics because I want people to be safer. I want people to be in better situations. I like to advocate for things that don't kill people. That's why I like politics. So that's my first principle, is just human solidarity. Doesn't matter where you're from, doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter what you've done. I think you deserve a baseline minimum of rights and abilities to, succeed in society. And that's my first principle. And as that being my first principle, I can't in any fashion call Bernie Sanders spineless. I just think it's juvenile. When you look at the horizon and how things have changed and how things look really good, you have 70% of primary voters, even though they voted for Biden, they still said that they overwhelmingly support abolishing private insurance. That's a stat it's unbelievable, right? Like, when you look at all the primaries, all the debates, everyone gaslighting everyone, Bernie was the only person who said that private insurance should be abolished. Everyone spent hours gaslighting him and you and everyone, and still 70% of people just said like, yeah, that's a bunch of bullshit, abolish it. Like that alone I think is a huge win, and I think you just got to be positive. You just got to be positive. Um so I don't know, just give me, if you're someone who says Bernie Sanders is spineless, or if you're really angry at him, give me your perspective. I'm not here to, attack anybody. I just think it's a little juvenile, but I always read I read every single comment I get. So I'm curious what y'all think. I just think historically speaking, like it's, you can make these same arguments that like Martin Luther King Jr. didn't do enough or whatever. Like you can make these same arguments that like, the Communist Party in the 1920s didn't do enough, or like you can make the same arguments that like, like it's just like, yeah, sure, that may be true, but at the same time, what's your other option? Like, and that's one of the other things with the Bernie campaign is that Bernie was a singular figure. The person that Bernie is came from the era of the 60s and 70s, and that was our chance at having an establishment player. So we can make all these criticisms. Bernie should have been going after endorsements. He should have been talking to more people, because I know that the next progressive that we have running for president isn't going to be a Bernie Sanders. It's going to be someone spawned from the Bernie Sanders movement in a way. I'm eyeballing Nina Turner. I think she's amazing, but it's not going to be Bernie Sanders. So Bernie had this unique positioning of being able to go and try to get endorsements, but he chose not to, and I think that was the fatal mistake. I don't think him being spineless, whatever, I don't think that's the fatal mistake here. I think Bernie kind of sectioning himself off of the establishment, I think that was the major mistake, because he didn't go full-throated anti-establishment. He went very hard against the establishment, but he always had that soft spot on the Democrats, and he should have just, instead of having that soft spot and doing nothing with it, he should have used that soft spot to try to deal make behind the scenes. Like, I think the fact that Bernie didn't even call up Jim Clyburn any times, bizarre. That's bizarre. And that, I think that's the fatal mistake, because we're not going to have this chance again where we have someone who's been in office for 40 years, and we're not going to have that chance again. So I think that was our only chance to make these inroads and go through the establishment pathway, while also advocating for good ideas. The next person's going to have to go full 1,000% against the establishment, because they're just really like Barbara Lee maybe, but like it's like one of those situations where like we really just don't have anybody who is in the same unique positioning that Bernie is in. So I mean, I don't know. Like, there's a lot of problems with this campaign, of course, and you can make these criticisms. But I mean, calling him a bad person, I can't jive with that, yo. I'm sorry, I just can't. I'm not that nihilistic, and maybe I will be eventually, maybe, but I just can't do that. So let me know what you think, and leave a comment. And again, I'm open to all debate challengers. This isn't just like creepy right wingers, right? Like, you can add me on Discord and we can talk. I'd like to record it, of course, because I like doing YouTube videos, but I'm down to talk to anybody about anything. So hit me up on Discord if you want to have an extended conversation. If not, leave a comment. And yeah, that's it. That's all I got.